Today, I share with you a private conversation about money with Richard Friesen. He is the owner, founder, and creator of the Mind Muscles Academy, a platform that allows for young students, people who are, just getting into it, to really understand money, finance, the stock market, and really all of the above. It really allows you to really think about how we view money and why we spend so much time striving for it. So he's going to talk about that today. And we really, really got deep into, just everything about money, every single thing. And I think this really, really provided a lot of value. And I hope that you really enjoyed this podcast. So make sure to check out the sponsors below, and make sure to check out all of his. You could send him an email with a link in the description, and literally you could check out all the things that he has to offer down below in the description. So without further ado, I give you Richard Friesen. All right, Richard Friesen, tell me about your new book, A Private Conversation with Money, and tell everybody a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, it's not something that I started out to do. I was a trader on the Pacific Exchange, on the board of directors. I developed new products for the exchange, and I built a trading firm. And what was interesting is that some of the traders with a very laid out methodology, a strategy where we just hit singles and doubles, very low risk. It was just a money-making strategy, but some traders didn't make it. Some traders would go up and then up and then up. And I brought in a hypnotherapist, and that happened to be my sister, Wendy, who was newly minted. And we discovered that there were internal struggles, internal limitations. And this really surprised me. And we could go into details, but each one of them had a belief system or an identity that prevented them from succeeding. And as a coach and a therapist, as I started to develop a business in helping people and helping traders and professional money managers, the biggest surprise to me was that they weren't prepared for success, that they didn't have a mental model of success, that they had belief, identity structures, and behaviors that didn't support the success. And so when a client comes to me, if I say, you know something, I don't think you're really prepared to step into success. They go, what?
Yeah.
You're crazy. But we all have a whole bunch of internal structures, subconscious beliefs, and are part of our identity. Like yesterday, a client, first session, we started talking, and I noticed some physiological reactions with some language. So we exaggerated those. We went into them. We pulled it back. And I can feel a rush of emotion now as I say this, but she said, I'm just not worthy.
Mm.
So what we got to is from, I can only make so much money, and then I seem to blow it. And very quickly, we got down to the core issue is that I'm not worthy. And with that core foundation, you can deal symptomatically, but it's not going to change anything. So what I discovered with my traders, with my private clients, with my entrepreneurs, professional money managers, is that we have internal conflicts around money, wealth, and success. And especially in our culture, today we're really divided around wealth. On one hand, we really admire wealthy people and their success and the cars and the yachts and all that stuff, and we want to be like that. But there's another very strong cultural pull about wealth, evil, money, unfairness, and injustice. And as a result, my clients, at least, for the most part, are really good-hearted people. They want the best for themselves, their families, their community, and even the world. And they've taken all this in, all this complexity, and as a result, they've got all these strings, these mishmash of internal beliefs, and that they want to be good. And as a result, they don't have a clear path to their own success, because it's just like weeds in the garden. They just can't get beyond it. So what all this came out was I started working around what are your mindset around money, wealth, and success. And out of this came a book. And the book, A Private Conversation with Money, is about Joe, a journalist, who looks at the world, the unfairness, the injustice, the pain, the poverty. And he, at the same time, has his own financial problems, and he also wants more money. And he's visited by a character called Money. And they end up having a series of conversations, Socratic type question answer conversations that give Joe the opportunity and invite him to go from all this complexity to moral clarity around his own success and wealth. And so what I've done is, in addition to writing the book, I'm starting a community of money positive people. And this is an ethically positive community where we can support each other and get clarity about what our mission, our goals, our passions, our ethics, our morality is, so that we can move in without all the internal conflicts.
Interesting. So one of the most interesting, things that I learned from you, and this is one of your slogans, is just stop fighting your brain, right?
Yeah.
And that just it hit me right away, because I noticed that, first of all, I'm in the Kelley School of Business down at Indiana University, and we are full of 7,000 young business students who are just trying to get into the world. And you notice that we're 18 to 22-year-olds who are just lost, is a great word, right? Trying to discover who we are, what we want to do, and all of these things. And yes, fighting your brain might be one of the biggest problems.
So tell me more about being lost. This is fascinating to me. What's that experience like as you think about yourself and you talk to others?
Okay, so I'm definitely a little bit different than the others. So I'll give you two scenarios. I'll give you myself, and I'll give you the typical Kelley finance student. So for myself, I never really particularly valued money, but I don't know if that's a symptom or if that's the cause. I'm more of just one of those people, I just want to sort of, I guess I always saw money as sort of a negative light, right? I saw money as, okay, not as sort of greed is good and, greed is bad and all of these things. Rather, I saw it as something I watch people sell their souls to, let's call it the metaphorical devil, or give themselves 90 hours a week, 80 hours a week to some inanimate object called paper money, and, and really waste their lives for it. So I basically went the other way and said, you know what? Money is almost worthless, right? And there's obviously, maybe that's too far on the spectrum, but something money will not bring me happiness, and therefore money is very difficult to come by, or money shouldn't be come by, or I shouldn't strive too hard to get money. Then on the other point, we could stop there. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that what you've noticed is that when we start using money as a measure of our success, often I find some of my clients who want success is that they're trying to fill a hole in their heart. So, for example, father didn't approve of them, was always critical. Mother didn't give them much love. And I am going to get that empty spot in my heart filled. And I'm going to prove I'm a worthwhile person. I'm going to show everybody that I'm successful, that I'm smart. And I'm going to devote that 80 hours a week to proving that. So as a result, happiness then becomes an event in the future. It's something that's going to happen to me, and then I'm going to be happy. Of course, when you try to fill a hole in your heart with an external thing like measurement, like money or airplanes or cars or trophy spouses and all that, when you get there, that hole in the heart is still there. So if I understand you correctly, just striving after money isn't going to make it. And that's why in the book and with my clients, I kind of reverse things, because that can be money created in that way can actually become very toxic. And you've talked in some of your podcasts before about if we don't deal with those emotional issues, they actually can embed themselves in our physiology and our health.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I notice, right? And that's actually a perfect transition to the people in, your traditional, we'll say, people who have an unhealthy view of money. And this is not really a knock on them. This is just the things that I see. And it's sort of the culture that's enforced in sort of the finance world, the finance world, especially I'm sure is, investment banking, day trading, stuff like that. It's very money driven. It's very money focused. And you'll notice that one of the first things that you'll see is that the people who are going into finance aren't doing it because they like finance. They're doing it because, first of all, their parents want them to go there. And two, because the culture wants them to go there. Right. And that right there just changes everything, because it really says, you know what, I'm not doing this because of some internal validation. This doesn't give me really any internal validation. It's more of, well, my parents are going to be happy with me. I find that to be the number one. Two, obviously, if this is most likely men, right, I'm going to get more girls, right? I'm going to be higher in the social hierarchy.
Yeah.
Of course, right? Like, this is college. And yeah, people are gonna think more highly of me. I'm going to be the type of person to be on my yacht when I'm 35 years old, and I'm going to be done with it. And while I consider that an infantile fantasy, I don't think people have thought it out that far. And then they're sort of left with this, I'm just going to keep striving. I'm going to keep striving until I reach some sort of goal that most likely will never come.
Yeah. Well, what you're pointing out is really important. That striving to fill that empty spot in their heart will just continue forever, and you can, work yourself to death. And the challenge is to address that empty spot in our heart, or what is missing. That means we're going to experience some temporary discomfort and pain. To recognize that, my clients, when we start to move toward that, often there's just the deepest sobbing and realization of what they're really missing and what they really want in their life. And that recognition then can be transformational. Once they can accept that pain and say, I am aware of it, I accept it, I can live with it, and now what do I want? Now, what you want now is coming from that acceptance and that awareness. And it's then what you want becomes very different when you're trying to avoid that, and you've put some boundary layers around it and you've quarantined it. Then what you want is very different from when you recognize what you've been missing in your life and the pain in your life. And from that place, then what you want becomes, I think, much more healthy.
Yeah. Really recently, actually, one of my friends, she said this, and it really, really blew my mind. She said, when you're in college, right, and we'll generalize this to when you're a human, the first thing that you must do is figure out who you are, then figure out what you want to do. And most people get it backwards, right? Most people, we see colleges and we see essentially careers as financial institutions. We see them as something to do to fulfill your financial obligation. And when you do that, when you detract that from the aspect of how it connects to you and how close you are to what you like and all of these things, and well, what makes you happy, then what ends up happening is you just choose the thing that, well, is detached from your values. So maybe the thing that will make you get the most approval, or the thing that will make you the most money, or anything like that. But when you find out who you are first, and when you really get, to this inner core of, in your case, right, just literally filling out that hole in your heart, then maybe you'll know a little bit more about what's going to make you happy. You'll know a little bit more about, okay, you know what? Maybe I wasn't meant to be a finance major. Maybe I wasn't meant to be an accounting major. Maybe I did this because I was trying to fulfill some external validation. And then from there, you actually choose something that you like.
Yes. And then from there, do you carry guilt about wealth and success? Now, once you've dropped down to that level and you say, now what do I really want? Then we still have all these cultural conflicting stuff. And so what I've done is I'm starting a community, and the community is a money positive community for people who have dropped down to that level of foundational awareness in their life, and then get some clarity about how I can add value to the world and add value to others. So for me, one of the things in the book that we rebrand money, we call it certificates of appreciation. In other words, if we do business together and I pay you some money for a service that you give me, I am happy to pay you that money because the service you give me is worth more to me than the money that I give you. Conversely, you've got your service honed to a way that even though it delivers more value to me, is not nearly as much work to you, and the money that I give you for that is worth more. So it's a win-win situation. So money that I give you is a certificate of appreciation. I appreciate the value that you're delivering to me. And conversely, so once we turn from money as this goal that's going to show everybody how good we are, how worthy we are, and all that, once we shift that to a certificate of appreciation, then we can say, how can I collect the most certificates of appreciation with the skill and the abilities that I have? Now, all of a sudden, the guilt just melts away. And in fact, one of the things I say, and this is quite shocking to many people, the more certificates of appreciation that you collect voluntarily and honestly, the more you've done for the world. Now, that is very different from the foundation is I need to prove that I am a person, that I need to prove to everybody that I need to accumulate wealth, because that is really money oriented as versus delivering value oriented and collecting certificates of appreciation. So one of my passions and missions in life is to shift the paradigm from getting money to delivering value and collecting certificates of appreciation, totally guilt-free. Some of my clients, what? Go ahead.
You're shifting the goal, right? You're shifting the goal from self-interest to certificates of appreciation.
Right. And the more you collect, you can go, ooh, I have, and it's amazing the number of my clients say, well, yeah, I want to be wealthy so that I can be a philanthropist, so I can give it to good causes. Mm-hmm. For me, that's a big red flag. That means we're still feeling some guilt and we need to create some sort of reason and to be able to collect it. So I stop them right there and say, whoa, what you're doing right now is a kind of a tell of something that still isn't clear. Until you can collect those certificates of appreciation totally and completely on their own without any need to justify it, well, then that still means you have some inner conflicts.
Okay, so let me try to see. Okay, so let me explain to you my guilt, right? And maybe this, because I used to be that type of person. I used to be the type of person to say, I want to get all the money in the world and give it away. I want to be completely self-sacrificial. My goal on this earth is not to be a human, but rather to be a giver to others, right? And I had that philosophy from the age of 16 to the age of, we'll say, 18, 19. So really, it was a long time, and I'm 20. So like this was a significant portion of my growing life. And let me explain to you my guilt, and let me see if I could try to articulate it. I was with my friend the other day, and we were walking down, and we were about to go grab some dinner. It was probably like 12 o'clock, so midnight. So we'll call it a little less late than dinner, but we're going to grab some food, and it's near midnight, and I turn around and I see the homeless people next to me. And there were 3 homeless people sitting next to the restaurant. And the first thing that I realize is I have no plans on giving an extra meal to this homeless person. Zero, right? Like I'm not going to buy an extra meal for them. I'm not going to do anything like that. I have absolutely nothing, right? And then I also say to myself, how arbitrary is it that my soul, my whatever, right, ended up here at a college institution with great parents, with a great life, with parents who had money, all of these things, and that person ended up there, right? And part of it is because I had willpower and, was blah, 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 and worked super hard at it. But part of it was because maybe they had a bad parents, bad childhood. Like there are so many different things that really cause the difference. And it's almost completely arbitrary. Then, and this absolutely blew my mind. I'm sitting there, I'm walking to the restaurant. I take a step right outside the restaurant and I hear a creak. I hear a crackling. And I'm like, what is that? I look underneath my foot. It was $100. $100 bill right underneath my foot. I go and I pick it up and I say, wow, I just got $100. Like, I'm like, oh my God, right? This is incredible. And me and my friend, he's like, yo, I'll pay for your meal. Like he was being super nice. And he said that beforehand. And I was like, no, like, dude, I'll pay for your meal. Like I just got $100. So I go and then I get this money. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then probably like 30 minutes later, I also feel, wait a second, that was also completely arbitrary. Why is it that me standing 10 feet away from the homeless person, why did I get this $100? Right? Why was I the one who stepped on this? Why am I the one who achieved this wealth accumulation, you could say, in the smallest scale, completely arbitrarily? And then you could take that to a larger scale and ask, okay, why is it that I have all this money that I got from, bar mitzvahs and, I'm Catholic. So like birthdays and confirmations and all of these things. And why is it that they have nothing? And I feel like I'm starting off at 20 years old, let's say, and I'm at a further along on the starting point. And well, if you look at it from that perspective, I don't see how it could not cause guilt.
So would you like everybody in the world to have parents that loved them, that educated them, that gave them skills and hope for the future? Would you wish that for everybody in the world?
Of course.
Yeah, I would too. So then the question becomes, how do we, as caring human beings, encourage that kind of family and parental love and advantages to everybody? So that then becomes a very interesting mission. Now we can say, it's unfair. We need to distribute money more evenly. I feel guilty. But on a symptomatic level, it is just so little that can be done.
Yeah.
On a cultural family level, if I look at my own kids, they were nursed, sang to, read to, homeschooled, partly private schooled. My wife is very scientifically oriented, took trips to Fermi labs, visited physicists. So they're all had this wonderful, rich environment that I wish for every kid in the world. So how do we create that? And we can all do our part by looking at what are the foundations of the life that you had, and how can we encourage the world, invite them to give everyone that same foundation. So rather than saying, oh my God, I feel guilty, say, wow, there's a model here. There's something that I've learned about how I am where I am. How can I spread that to the rest of the world? Wow, what a powerful mission that can be when you want that for everybody. And you don't need a shred of guilt about it, because your hope is to raise everybody up to the experiences and the life that brought you to where you are today. Wow.
That was one of the moments that I guess changed my philosophy on the world. There was a author named Jordan Peterson. He's sort of a modern day philosopher, and he said, yes, we are arbitrarily placed in the world, right? We are just completely, just placed here with all of our gifts and burdens and all of these things and flaws. But he says, take your gifts, take the things that you've been given and use it as something to bring life more to other people, and take those burdens and use them, or take those flaws and show them and believe that they are your burdens of being. They're the cost, they're the ticket that you have to pay to be a part of life. And well, accept it, accept your burdens, accept that you're alive, and that's your ticket to entry, and take with it what you will, right? Use it, overcome your burdens and accentuate your strengths. And maybe that's just the purpose of life. So you're saying, okay, basically take those gifts, right? Take the things that you've been given, right? I'm blessed not only to be able to achieve financial success and all of these things, but yeah, like emotional validation from my parents, like, really, really strong ability to grow up. Even just the fact that I'm, decently articulate and was given a decent IQ and like was always good in school and all of these things. Like all of these are, in my belief, rather arbitrary, but it's like everything's arbitrary. So, and maybe some of it's not fair. So if I were to take these things and use them for something like helping other people who have their burdens, then maybe that makes life better.
Yeah. Delivering value. Now, there's all sorts of ways to deliver value. There is the Bill Gates, Steve Jobs way, where they just brought a tremendous amount of technology that I really appreciate. Yeah. Then there are the Martin Luther Kings, Mahatma Gandhi, the people who have made cultural transformations. We can't do it all. Some people are going to really move the spirit, raise the spiritual level of the world. Other people are going to bring technology. If I look at my life, my little bit around conversations with money is that in this process, Joe comes to the point where he takes over a school and he starts teaching kids about life and money and success. So he has done one small part in this entire fabric that makes Nick successful and people like you successful. How can we all, if we have this overarching sense of what we do intentionally to make life better for all of us, and we each take a bit of it and we do it intentionally and we do it as part of our passion and mission, then the whole world can raise up. So in terms of my contribution, what I want to do is get real clarity around different ways that we can contribute, add value to the world, be guilt-free about our advantages and the world we were given, and then figure out how can we add value to the world. And for some of it's going to be on a more spiritual plane. For others, it'll be just on a sheer commercial delivery plane. But we're all different. And if we can all add our differences, we're going to make the world a better place. And some of us are going to get very wealthy doing it. And that wealth, then, I talk a lot about the advantages of excessive wealth. But that's another topic that we can go into.
Well, I think that's one of the topics that I think really sort of hits, and it really makes sense to me, right? It's like, okay, most people, right? So what you're talking about, and the way I sort of see this is sort of like layers, right? So I see, let's call it like an onion, right? Because that's a really good metaphor for it. The center of this onion, right, blocked out by all the outside, is this pure, great way of looking at money, without, or at least absent of, these outside influences. But first, to be able to get this pure, beautiful inside, you have to really peel off self-interest, greed, shame, right? All of these different influences and factors that are driving our personality to do these things that are just completely self-interested and money-driven and greed-driven and profit-driven, and really don't really consider the helping of the world and the helping of other people. So
can I stop you there?
Yeah, go for it.
For example, if you were a client, I'd say greed, self-interest, money, and they're not taking into account the bigger world. I'm going to advocate that for some people, this is absolutely their mission. So somebody who's driving a technology company that is going to make the world better, but they don't give a what about the betterment of the world. They just want to go public and make a lot of money. That they have a contribution also, as long as they're honest, open, they're not cheating, they're delivering value. So I would like to invite you to entertain that is part of this larger fabric, and that we can appreciate that contribution, even though they may not have any spiritual or larger values like we would like to have. Mm-hmm. But if everyone was into spiritual values, we wouldn't have that advancement in medical care, technology, more comfortable life, saving lives through, avoiding car crashes and just a million different things. So take a look at what you just said in terms of it just had a sense that there is some internal struggle about this issue. So can you say more about that?
Yeah. So the thing that's sort of popping in my mind is you're saying that, okay, because someone's achieving money, therefore they're contributing value, and for the technology company, for example, the person's making money and delivering value at the same time. But that implies an underlying, let's say, belief in capitalism, right? It says that because I'm making money, that means I am by definition contributing value to society. And that is the capitalist belief. And of course I believe in capitalism, duh. But at the same time, I also recognize that the correlation between the two are not necessarily correlated. So you look at, for example, Facebook, right? Facebook has been absolutely killing me recently when they wanted to open up a child's Instagram, right? They also own Instagram. They want to open up a child's Instagram. And you ask the question, what are they trying to do, right? Okay, they're going to be delivering value to society. They're going to be making money. And we could just say this about the Facebook and Instagram platform in general. Okay, they're billion-dollar companies. Mark Zuckerberg is one of the richest people on the planet, but then at the same time, he's caused so many people to get addicted to their smartphones, caused so many people to commit suicide, depression. We have all the stats, all the numbers on this. And while he's accumulating wealth, and we could pretty much say that he does not really care much about the fabric of society, because based off his actions, based off him hiring psychologists and neuroscience to be able to rewire the human brain and doing all these things to make sure that people spend more time on their product, that he's delivering value, he's making money, but at the same time, he's not doing it for society. And therefore there's a little disconnect between value and, let's say, good in society and something like making money.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is, I think you've just nailed, or you're getting right down to one of the core issues that is very difficult to resolve.
Yeah.
On one hand, I can say the responsibility, there's always people who are going to try to make money from our own insecurities, our own pleasures, our desires. And we're getting so smart in what you mentioned, in our ability to take a key to the brain in such a way to give it pleasure and addiction that can be very destructive.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, just think of it like the street corner heroin dealer. that they are on a large scale the heroin dealer. And I find that myself, sometimes I get stuck in looking at all sorts of things on my phone that aren't very helpful to me.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, how do we create the best world? Is it by asking the entrepreneurs of the world, the business people of the world, to behave in such a way that's better for the world? Or do we look at ourselves and say, how do I act responsibly in the world, that I believe and behave in ways that are good for me in the long term and my family and my kids and my community?
Mm.
And as long as humans are been around, there are people who will deal drugs. And let's just, for a shortcut metaphor, say we're dealing drugs here. So how do we stop ourselves from being destroyed, and especially when we get to artificial intelligence? And that's a whole nother topic. It's going to get really good at fitting that key into our neurological chemical brain. So how do we stop that? Well, for me, it's having meaning in life. Like if I work with somebody who has an addiction, I don't work on stopping the addiction. I look at stepping into a positive life. If we're stopping an addiction, it's willpower, it's discipline, it's struggle, it's just like this. But if I can introduce them to something that feels better in the moment, serves them better, and is attached to some larger meaning or picture, then in that moment where they have that choice to step into that addiction, they'll say, oh, no, this feels much better. So by creating the new world. So how do we create a world for everybody that even though those addictive powers are there, that we can make a choice from our higher selves and that serve us better, both in the short term because they feel better, and in the long term, and also we give us more ability to contribute to our families, our communities, and the world.
I think you hit it really well, actually. It's something that that kills me, right? It kills me. So what you're talking about right there is the difference between, okay, do I fix society or do I fix myself, right? The Michael Jackson man in the mirror debate, like, where do you start? Do you start with the man in the mirror? And it's tough. It's tough because there's something that actually, it was Jordan Peterson. He actually noted, and this has been on my mind. It's that young people, for whatever reason, maybe because we have the potential to be Martin Luther King, we have the potential to be someone like Steve Jobs and change the world. We have this sort of messianic, right, Messiah, Jesus-like instinct within us that when we're teenagers, when we're younger, when we're in our 20s, we feel this need, this desire to look at the world and say, there are this many societal problems. Look at everything that's going on. You could find a million societal problems that exist. You'll see this all the time in politics, right? And change it, right? Look at the world, say this is terrible, and change it from a societal level. And to some degree, this is true. To some degree, we could say, okay, I'm going to look at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and take him down. But then at the end of the day, you say, maybe that's not so easy, right? Maybe that's not so easy. He has, in voting rights in his corporation, he has over 50% voting rights. So basically, it's him calling the shots and everyone else has to sit on the side. Nobody has any influence. And the only person who could really take him down is regulators and the government and all of that stuff. And when you look at it logically, you sort of see that. And I have this messianic tendency within me. And this might have been why when I was 16 to 18 years old, as we were saying, that I had this idea to be philanthropic and growing and helping people and all these things and being self-sacrificing, because that's exactly what Jesus did, right? That's the Messiah. So, but then you come to the realization that maybe the world isn't as malleable as you think, like maybe. Right?
Oh boy.
It's unfortunate, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Why can't we just shape the world to be a better place?
Why can't I just go on my computer and just delete Facebook from the internet? Right? It's not that easy, but it's first of all, it's a tough realization to come to, right? To say that you're going to do something for yourself instead of other people, or you're going to help the small people in your community instead of the entire world. What you're really saying is, I'm closing off that potential path in my life, right? You imagine when you're 4 years old or 16 years old for that matter, you have 1,000, a million different paths, potential paths that you can go to. And maybe we'll say the highest one is to become the next Martin Luther King, to become the next Bill Gates, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, when you admit to yourself that you're not the Messiah, right? When you say something like that, what are you saying? You're really saying, holy crap, right? That path is closed off, that I'm not going to be that type of person. And well, that's a tough realization, right? Like, why would somebody ever want to come to that realization? Why wouldn't somebody do essentially what we do all the time? And this kind of gets back to money, is I'll give out money someday. I'll give out money to people when I have all the money in the world and I can be philanthropic, instead of just saying, you know what? I have some money right now. It's a small amount of money. I'm just going to give away 5% of my income, 2% of my income, whatever. Instead, people hoard it. People keep it to themselves and they say, when I make all the money in the world, then I'll give it away. It's like, okay, be a Messiah. Just be the Messiah, right? You're planning to be the Messiah. Instead, just be a good person. Just focus on yourself, focus on the individual, focus on the small scale. And then that's all you need.
Yeah. And for me, focusing on the small scale is creating a culture, family of where when children are born into the world, they're loved, they're respected, they're not sent to just educational mills. Mm-hmm. They are encouraged with their different skills and characteristics. And every child feels loved, feels cared for, has a future, and is attached to family and community in a way that they realize that their own self-interest, their own well-being is connected to a community, and again, delivering value. So if you imagine, in fact, I have a chapter in the book like this. If you imagine a world where everybody is growing up like this, we're still going to have neurological problems. We're going to have kids who have some brain damage. There's still going to be perversions and all that. But the bulk of the culture is going to be so encouraging. Like if you step into a sports bar and your favorite team is playing, everybody's drinking, you know exactly how to behave. If you go, you said you were Catholic, I think. If you go to Mass, you behave very differently. In other words, the context you're in creates a whole set of behavior. What if our culture was in a context of respect, a context as I respect you, you can live your life as you wish, as long as you respect my boundaries and respect me. And we, in a culture where our contributions were met with, if it's commercial, with money, or contributions in a community, we could be part of it and watch it grow. If everyone grew up in that, politics, economics, taxes, social reform wouldn't even be an issue.
Yeah.
Because we have created a culture that is working. So when you try to then create solutions from politics has only one motivation, and that's force. There's no other, it can threaten you, it can tax you, and if you don't obey, it'll throw you in jail. You try not paying your taxes forever, and eventually somebody will come knocking on your door. If you resist arrest, then they'll haul you away. So force and the implied force. So what we've done as a culture, I think we've moved away from the really hard things. I mean, what I just talked about is probably one of the most challenging, difficult human, what's the word? Human complexity and human challenges that we have is to create internally managed, wholesome, healthy human beings.
Yeah.
Oh my God, is that difficult? So in order to avoid that difficulty, we then try political solutions who have this big mallet that can only play whack-a-mole to what is an underlying psychological and cultural issue.
It's really interesting. I mean, like, you can look at it from multiple perspectives. So like when you say culture, I'm actually like, I'm thinking of all the different cultures that surround us. So for example, right, I see a political culture, right? I see an economic culture of, you know, for example, you worked in the stock market. I'm assuming you saw many people who are just tied up in the rat race, right?
Oh boy.
Universal, right? And I see it in my finance majors, right? It's like you have the people who you're saying, okay, it would be great if we had a common respect for each other and all of these things. It's called the rat race for a reason, right? You're not a human, right? You're a rat. You're just trying to run as fast as you can, get as far as you can on the wheel, and you don't care about who else you tear down. And that's one of the unfortunate realities of business, you know, and that's one of the cultures, right? And then you see, you know, social cultures, yeah, like the American culture, whatever that is, you know, it's been so tied up in economics that maybe that's one of the things that is really dragging us down. But, you know, the question is, okay, so what do you do about these cultures, right? So let's say we have a thrown off economic culture. You look at other companies, or not companies, countries. You see other countries and they have monetary systems, they have capitalism, they have all these things, but they don't have this sort of perverted capitalism that I feel like America has, where people are striving, putting their entire life into money. Right? Or we'll say a perverted section of capitalism where people are putting their entire life into money. They're just literally dedicating themselves to the acquiring of wealth, where they, at the end, they realize that it's not really worth it. You look at a lot of the European countries, they're like, wait a second, maybe we should live first, right? Maybe we should live a little bit more. You know, they don't really have this desire to be American exceptionalism and to be the best and to be the greatest. So what do we do about that?
Well, that's perhaps the most difficult question that you could have asked.
Give me the answers.
Yes. Okay. Well, fortunately, you come to the guy who has the final answer, so you can take a breath and we don't have to worry. As I think about this, I feel a wave of sadness. It almost feels like, and this is coming from a Wall Street kind of guy, that we almost need a spiritual revival.
Yeah.
My father was an evangelical Protestant minister. I came from a strong Protestant background. I went to Wheaton College, was strong. You know, it was a conservative politically and religious school. And even though I'm no longer religious in the sense of a fundamental evangelical and believing all the details around that, and I don't attend a church or anything like that, it feels like what all the symptoms that you brought up are a result of a breakdown of many of the institutions that we've had. In other words, it used to be that most people would go to the church or the synagogue or to mass, or to if you're, you know, one of the Eastern religions or Islam, you go to their place of worship. And as I went to church growing up, as my father was a preacher, so that was a foregone conclusion. There was something about, they would separate the men and the women, and we'd go to prayer groups and we'd stand in a circle and hold hands and pray for each other and pray for us to be better people. Church is now dissolving. If we look at the other institutions, the small town communities with the internet, with people moving for jobs, a lot of that is broken down. The nuclear family, if we look at the single parenting, that is broken down. If we look at the extended family, parents and grandparents. It used to be like one of my clients was from India. And in India, there was everybody, the cousins, the grandmas, the aunts and uncles. They all lived really close or in a larger compound, depending on their wealth. And there was a huge amount of expectation. Now, there's lots of challenges with that if you don't fit in, of course. But there was a class system, and you knew who you were. And as a result, your behaviors.
That's okay.
Your behaviors were bounded by a strong cultural, cohesive net that was both safe, comfortable, and constraining under certain circumstances. But if we look at our society, religion, family, extended family, small town, patriotism, all that is broken apart now. And as a result, what do we do to replace it in terms of the deeper meaning that we all have and the cohesion that we have? And so what you're asking is, how do we make that change? And I don't see making that change on a symptomatic level. I think there's going to be something deeper that happens, because when people feel that loss, we're clan animals, we're tribal. And how do we bring all of that back together? And I don't know the answer. You asked a question that really rips me apart, because I just so long for an answer that I don't have. But my sense is there's a possibility of a spiritual reawakening. And my hope is that the spiritual reawakening is inclusive, is open-hearted, is loving, and rather than being divisive and us versus them.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, what you're really saying is that it can't start from the top down, right? We're trying a lot of top-down strategies. It must start from the bottom up. And it's tough. It's tough because you brought up religion, and I think really that hits the nail on the head, because the thing about religion is, yes, the Garden of Eden doesn't actually exist, and like the world wasn't created 6,000 years ago, and we know that. Like it's all so true, but the unfortunate reality is, even though the religions, whatever religion you choose, even though it's wrong in that degree, right? Even though it's wrong in that way, it still brought value. It still brought something, right? It still brought this spiritual connectedness. And I really like how you said that. You said that you were fundamentalist, and even though you were able to shed the fundamentalism and the dogmatic religion part of it, you still kept your spirituality, right? You still kept that part of you. And it's like, we don't have that anymore. Right. So you're saying we took off the top part, we took off the dogma, and we said, because there's this dogma, because there's this rigid structure that's ignorant and wrong, which is true, it is ignorant and it is wrong. We have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'll give you a different perspective. So I read a lot of depth psychology, and one of the people that I really like is Carl Jung. And he basically said it flat out, He obviously super very popular, and he said the only way that we're going to be able to have this fixing of this problem in the West is going to be with the reinstitution of religion. And it doesn't have to be with the reinstitution of Christianity. It doesn't have to be with the reinstitution of dogmatic, structural, top-down processes. But it needs to come from something like religion, because we've lost that underlying sense of self as a community, if that makes sense. We've lost that underlying sense of, okay, who are we? What do we do? We have a problem of meaninglessness in our society, and
that's why I think you brought up Jordan Peterson, is why he's so popular, because he's touched that just unmet, articulated need.
Yeah. And I'm happy that you've heard of Jordan Peterson, because he was the one who kind of flipped my script, right? He really flipped my script to be able to be like, you know what? This is not like, I'm not just wandering aimlessly around. Like, I'm not. Like, I always spend so much time. Like, I would be the kid in high school. Like, okay, pursue one project for 6 months. This kind of bores me now. Like, it really, like, I just did it because it gave me some sort of something to do, and then I'd pursue another thing, then pursue another thing, and then I'd end up like, I found Jordan Peterson. I'm like, wow, like it filled something deeper inside, and that just makes a huge difference.
Yes, indeed. So moving forward, we all can contribute, and we can contribute by inviting people. Wow.
I know we hit it deep.
By inviting people to be aware of their deepest needs and accept them, rather than trying to wall them off and to look at all sorts of symptomatic things in order to fill something that can't be filled from up here.
Yeah.
And if we can personally look into people's eyes, take a breath and say, I'm inviting you to this place, and there's a safe container for you to step into. Wow. And if more and more people can do that, slowly we can put together all these things that have unraveled, like you say, the dogmatics of religion. Well, yeah, that's unraveling under our scientific knowledge. But if we can start to put together something that's deeper and underneath that, and that's why I wrote the book that I did. It's just one, just so narrow slice of that bigger puzzle. And so if we can all contribute, and maybe there is a community of people who all are taking different slices, but the underlying meaning, the purpose is to tie us back together with a higher level meaning and a purpose of bringing us together, even with our differences, even with our biases, our human frailties, our egos, and all of that. If there's something that maybe there's deeper, maybe your messianic dreams when you were younger, maybe I'm going to invite you to step into them again.
Wow. I know. I mean, I think personally, right, I have an unmet need there. I do. Like, I find myself desire, or at least with a certain mindset, and I haven't found too many people that matched onto me. I just haven't, right? And most of those people are kind of dissociated, right? Like, I pick off one person from my high school, and I pick off one person from, that I met at Indiana, and I have all these things. But yeah, it's not easy to come together every night and discuss things that are real, because that's not, like, I wouldn't say that's not how people work, but that's not how we currently work. And I've actually, I could disagree with that, because there are many times where I've broken that principle. There are many times, like, I have one club at Indiana where we literally get together every other week and we just talk about whatever's actually on our minds. And yeah, like that does not currently exist at the moment. I'll tell you that much, on a large scale, and it doesn't. And I think it's great what you're doing in terms of having a community like that.
Yeah, I'm starting an online community, and if anybody's interested, they can email me or contact me, and I can direct them to it. And this community is an invitation to step down to your deepest needs, your deepest desires, rather than trying to solve symptomatic problems. Now, given that, if we step down, then we're going to have all sorts of challenges in our life as we move back up to the real world. And this community is here to support you as you do that from that foundation.
Yeah, and I really like that. First of all, You have my email. Send me that email, and and I think it's a really really wonderful idea, and yeah, I'll even put your email in the description to this video, literally right below, so that is not a problem at all.
Well, excellent.
Well, Richard Friesen, this was a great conversation. I honestly, I came into this thinking we were talking about the stock market.
Oh, we can talk about the stock market, we can talk about economics, about politics, but ultimately between you and I, we're going to spend 5-10 minutes up here, and then we're going to say, rather than playing whack-a-mole, let's look at the human condition. How can we contribute to making the human condition better? And that's where I think you and I really can touch each other and touch everyone as we make that invitation, not just between you and I and our smaller groups, but to the world at large. And if we're comfortable with ourselves, comfortable with where we are, and looking at our own issues and frailties, and we can look at somebody in the eye and say, I'm comfortable with me, I invite you to be comfortable with yourself. And I think that can spread. And much like Jordan Peterson and the phenomena that he is, we can create that phenomena in the people we connect with.
I love that. I think that's the perfect place to end it, because that is literally the synopsis of this conversation. And
okay.
Richard, first of all, tell everybody where they could find you, tell everybody about that. And this was amazing. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I so appreciate you, and I appreciate our conversation, that we were able to really get to what matters. And so thank you very much. And I look forward, either online or offline, to continue.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Nick Lugo Show with Richard Friesen. To support this podcast, please give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And so I'll leave you with a quote from an old Chinese proverb. If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want happiness for a lifetime, help somebody. I love that. And well, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next time.